At 82, I thought I'd figured out life. I'd seen it all, or so I believed. But there's one decision that haunts me every single day: moving into a nursing home. Back then, it seemed like the safest choice. My kids urged me to do it. The staff painted a rosy picture, and every promise sounded like paradise. But slowly, the truth unraveled, and it wasn't the peaceful haven I'd imagined. If you're retired, or if you have an aging loved one facing this crossroads, this podcast is for you. I'm going to share 6 hard truths I wish someone had told me before I made that choice. These are the little things we often overlook, but once they're gone, they're nearly impossible to get back. Stay with me, because the next few minutes could spare you from a decision that changes the rest of your life. When I first walked through the doors of the nursing home, I thought I'd found a place where I could live securely, safely, maybe even comfortably. But bit by bit, I realized something was being stripped away: my personal freedom, the very thing that defines human dignity. I thought I was just changing my address, leaving my familiar house for a place with caregivers, regular meals, and people to chat with daily. I didn't realize I was giving up something far more precious: my independence. For decades, I decided how to live my life. I ate breakfast when I was hungry, not when a bell rang. I stayed up late if I was caught in a good book. I took walks when my heart needed soothing. Those small choices might seem trivial, but when you lose the power to make them, you discover they are freedom. My first week in the nursing home, I woke to a caregiver knocking on my door. They brought my pills, helped me dress, and nudged me toward breakfast even though I wasn't hungry. Every part of my day was scheduled: breakfast at 7, lunch at 11, showers by the clock. Even bedtime wasn't my call. I remember wanting to take my usual afternoon stroll. I stepped into the hallway, only to be told I needed an escort, and that day, the escort was busy with someone else. I shuffled back to my room, stared out the window, and felt like a child begging permission to breathe fresh air. Freedom doesn't vanish all at once. It slips away quietly, piece by piece. Today, you eat a meal you don't like because it's the only option. Tomorrow, you stop asking for coffee after 6 p.m. because it'll keep you up. Soon, you're waiting for someone else to decide when you can wear a jacket, take a shower, or leave your room. The worst part, you stop noticing it bothers you because you've gotten used to having no choice. One morning, I woke up in an unfamiliar room, on a bed that wasn't mine, without my favorite book by the pillow, without the sound of birds outside or the smell of coffee I'd brew myself. I sat up, looked around, and it hit me: this isn't home. This is where I exist, but it's not where I live anymore, not the way I choose. If you're thinking about a nursing home, or if you're telling yourself, "I don't need much at this age," let me remind you, it's the small daily choices that make you. Lose the right to pick your meal time, your bedtime, or when to step outside, and you're not just losing time, you're losing yourself. Freedom isn't about grand adventures. It's about choosing how to live each day, even if it's just brewing your tea the way you like, exactly when you want it. When that's gone, there's an emptiness no words can capture. But losing freedom wasn't what broke my heart the most. What hurt even more was the silence that grew between me and the people I love. Losing freedom was a quiet shock. But losing connection with my loved ones, that's what made me feel truly left behind. When I first moved in, my family, my son, daughter-in-law, and grandkids were wonderful. They called almost daily, visited on weekends with my favorite snacks, shared lively stories, and brought drawings from the kids' school. They promised to stop by often, to keep loneliness at bay. I believed them. And for those first few weeks, it felt warm and comforting. But then, the calls tapered off, visits got postponed. "We're a bit busy this week," they'd say, or "the kids have a soccer game," or "it's chilly out. Dad, rest up, we'll come next week." At first, I understood. I've lived a busy life, too, juggling work, kids, and endless to-dos. I got it. But the absences piled up. What started as temporary became routine. One afternoon, I waited in the visitor's lounge for my son, as we'd planned. It was a soft, sunny day, and I wore my best shirt, the one I saved for special occasions. I wanted my grandkids to see their grandpa looking strong and happy. But he didn't come. No one did. No call, no explanation. Just me, sitting there, watching other residents hug their families while I checked the clock for the 10th time. I stopped reaching out as much. When I called my son, I could hear the rush in his voice, like he was multitasking or driving. Our talks got shorter, sometimes went unanswered, followed by a quick call back later. I didn't blame him. I just felt like I was becoming a gentle burden, light enough to forget. A nursing home can provide excellent care, doctors, nurses, daily help, but no one can replace family. No one looks at you and remembers the days you drove them to school, cooked holiday dinners, or told that old story only your loved ones laugh at just right. One night, I sat quietly in my room, the glow of a small lamp falling on a family photo on my shelf. I stared at my kids' and grandkids' faces and thought, it's not that they don't love me, but life sweeps them along, and I'm standing still, forgotten in their love. If you have a parent in a nursing home, I'm not here to judge. I just ask you to remember, a 5-minute call, a handwritten note, or a simple dinner together can mean the world to someone like me. It reminds us we still matter. We don't need much just to know we're not forgotten. Loneliness becomes a habit, but when there's nothing to keep you busy, no role to play in life, you start to wonder, what am I even living for? Back home, my mornings started with brewing coffee, watering my porch plants, and picking ripe tomatoes from the garden. I loved snipping fresh herbs, plucking mint leaves for lunch, or just tidying my bookshelf my way. Those small tasks mattered. They reminded me I was keeping my home alive, breathing. Here, those things are gone. Someone else waters the plants. My room's cleaned on a schedule. Meals arrive on time, pre-made. I don't have to do anything. That should feel freeing, right? But instead, the more I'm taken care of, the more useless I feel. No one needs me anymore. There's nothing for me to do. Days blend into 3 meals, a few activities like bingo or music, then back to my room. Sometimes I turn on the TV, but don't watch, it's just noise. I tried journaling, but what's there to write when every day feels the same, quiet and empty? One afternoon, I watched a young staff member plant flowers by the garden bed. Her hands moved quickly, sunlight catching her hair, and it reminded me of myself decades ago. My heart ached not from envy, but because I realized I'm no longer the one doing, I'm just the one watching. When you stop doing even the smallest things, you start to ask yourself, why am I here? We all need a role, something to aim for, to feel we're still part of this world. I used to be a father, a grandfather, a husband with duties, responsibilities, and so much joy. Now, I'm just the man in room 304. Everyone's polite, kind, but no one truly needs me like they once did. The saddest part isn't the loneliness or the quiet. It's that I'm no longer given a chance to be useful. Not because I don't want to, but because no one thinks I can, or that I should. We don't fear aging. We fear being seen as irrelevant. Because when you lose your purpose, waking up each morning doesn't mean much anymore. With nothing to do, I just sat and waited for time to pass. And then my body started to give up, too. Day by day, it faded. I used to think aging was just natural, but I never expected to feel so worn out so fast, as if a few months here aged me years. At home, I drove to the store, tied my shoes, climbed my front steps without much trouble. But in the nursing home, those tasks aren't needed anymore. No one encouraged me to try. They stop me if I reach for something high. They're worried I'll fall, get tired, or worse. I know they mean well, but eventually, I stop trying too. I walk less now. I sit more. Some days, I barely get out of bed because there's nothing to do, and that nothing is what saps the strength from someone like me. Your body's like a machine, don't use it, and it rusts. My hands, once nimble in the garden or fixing a lamp, now tremble holding a spoon. My back, once straight, now needs a cane to stand. Not because I don't want to be strong, but because there's no space here to move naturally, to live actively like I used to. When I first arrived, I dressed myself, put on my shoes. Weeks later, the nurses started doing it for me. I said no at first, but their schedules were tight, so I let them for speed. Then it became routine, and then I forgot I could do those things myself. When you let others do everything, you think you're being cared for, but really, you're losing the movement that keeps you strong, independent. From small losses, I grew more reliant on help with shampooing, bathing, even pulling up a blanket. The irony, the more I depended, the weaker I got. The weaker I got, the less they let me do. It's a cycle no one sees until it's too late. They say, if you don't use it, you lose it. I understand that now. I've lost the ability to walk confidently, to fold a shirt, to trust my own body. Every stumble hurts not just my knees, but my pride. We'll all grow old, but aging while still moving, still choosing, that's what keeps us healthy, keeps us dignified. I'm not afraid of death. I'm afraid of living in a body too frail to do the simplest things I once took for granted. When my body couldn't keep up, I had to rely on others for the most personal tasks. And with that, I didn't just lose strength, I lost my privacy. At home, I had my corner, a worn armchair, a stack of favorite books, a soft lamp I'd light each night. I could sit there for hours, undisturbed. No explanations needed. That was my space, mine alone. Now, I share a small room with a stranger, someone I didn't choose, someone I'll never really know. When they cough, I startle. When they flip on the light at midnight, my sleep vanishes. Everything's restricted, the TV's volume, my clothes kept neat to avoid cluttering our space. It feels like boarding school, but worse, because I'm not a teenager anymore. I'm an old man who craves quiet to survive. Worst of all, the things that feel instinctive, using the bathroom, showering, dressing, are no longer private. The nurses are kind, professional, but they're still strangers. I see their quick glances as they help me into pants, feel their clinical efficiency as they sponge me down like a child. They mean no harm, but I'm ashamed. I was a strong father, a devoted husband, a provider. Now, I'm an old man who can't button his own shirt. Each time, it's not just physical pain, it's a wound to my self-respect. Being exposed, not just without clothes, but without privacy or dignity, eats at me daily. It makes me feel less like a person and more like a patient, a case, a name on a chart. Someone once said people need 3 things to live: food, family, and a space of their own. I've lost all 3 here, but it's the last one, privacy and dignity, that chokes me the most. I don't blame anyone, not my family, not the staff. They're doing what they think is best, but what they forget is that people like me don't just need pills and punctual meals. We need to feel human, worthy, private, whole despite our gray hair. When I first arrived, I told myself, this is just temporary. I'll get stronger and go home. That hope kept me going those early weeks. I believed this was a pit stop, not the end. But time passed, and that dream of going home faded like morning mist outside my window. At first, I clung to old habits, morning stretches, pacing the halls, dressing myself with my cane nearby. I wanted to prove to my family, to myself, that I was still independent. I'd recover. I'd leave. But my body didn't agree with my heart. Each month, I felt weaker. Stairs I once climbed easily became mountains. Showering or dressing alone grew harder. So I leaned on the nurses more, used a wheelchair for longer trips, let someone else track my pills and blood pressure. Little by little, I lost the ability to do small, vital things tied to freedom, to dignity, to the hope of one day, I'll walk out of here. The truth is, once you've been here long enough, this place stops being temporary. It becomes a reluctant home. The cruelest part, you don't notice when it happens. There's no clear line between visitor and resident. It's gradual, silent. By the time you see it, it's too late. I asked the doctor once, what would it take to go home? His answer was gentle but brutal. You just need to manage on your own. Simple, right? But I know, with my health now, that's nearly impossible. No round-the-clock help, no medical van, no doctor steps away. My old house, too big, too steep, too full of memories, is no longer safe. I'm caught between two worlds, a home I can't return to and a facility I never wanted to claim. The longer I stay, the deeper I sink into this trap with no way out. When you're young, freedom means traveling, chasing dreams. When you're old, it's simpler, choosing your bed, staying in a place you love, or just walking out your own door. When that becomes impossible, you're no longer the one choosing, someone else chooses for you. That's when I face the truth. I've stayed longer than I planned. If I could go back, I wish my family and I had chosen a different path. If you're retired, or if you have aging parents or loved ones, you might feel the weight of my story. Nursing homes can offer medical care, safety, but they're not the only option, and they shouldn't be the default for growing old. Aging isn't an ending, it's a new chapter where we can still contribute, love, and be loved. What we need isn't just safe walls, it's genuine care, regular conversations, and respect for a lifetime weathered by storms. There are other ways, communities that help seniors stay at home, in-home care services, or multi-generational homes where everyone shares life together. These options don't just preserve freedom and dignity, they preserve belonging. If you can, ask your parents one simple question: how do you really want to live in your final years? And if you're at that age, don't be afraid to speak your truth. Because aging isn't about waiting, it's about living meaningfully every single day.